Good evening. Welcome to the January 12th work session of the Gaston County Board of Commissioners. My name is Tom Kieger. I serve as chairman of the board, as well as one of the commissioners from Gastonia Township. At this time, I'd like to welcome all our viewers and thank Time Warner Cable and AT&T for making this possible for our citizens. For our television audience, I'd like to introduce our county commissioners, starting on my right.
Alan Fraley, Cherryville Township.
Good evening, Chad Brown, Riverbend Township.
Good evening, Mickey Price, South Point Township.
Good evening. He said Mickey Price, South Point Township. I'm Jason Williams, Gastonia Township.
And I'm Joe Carpenter, Crowders Mountain Township.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We're also joined by Clerk Donna Buff and Earl Mathers, our manager, and Charles Moore, the county attorney. At this time, we will have several proclamations and commendations, and I'm going to start it off, and I'll ask our retired Police Chief Bowie to join me along with his group at the podium. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. We were going to have an invocation first. I invited the Reverend Council Member Tom Gillespie of Lowell to give us the meeting's invocational prayer, and Commissioner Carpenter will lead us in the pledge. Reverend Gillespie.
Let us bow our heads in a word of prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank Thee for this day. We thank You for Your Son, Jesus, who died on Calvary's cross that we might have a right to the tree of life. Father God, we pray Thy blessings upon this commission board. We pray You'll bless the chairman and bless every commissioner. Father, give us eyes to see the best in people. Give us a heart that will forgive the worst in people. Give us a mind that will forget the bad, and a soul that will never lose faith in God. Teach us, O God, that as long as America is good, it will remain great. And Father, as we close this prayer, let the commissioners, the viewers, and the citizens know that we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So God, teach us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with Thy God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, now that I screwed up the very first part of my first meeting, we'll try it again. Retired Chief, good to see you. Come on, guys. Come on, Jaden. It gives me pleasure to do all proclamations and commendations, but this one is former Chief Bowie, retired Chief Bowie. He's been a good friend of mine for many years. He's from New York. I'm from New Jersey. We both are alumnus of Belmont Abbey College, and we attend the same church. So this is a little personal, and I know Jim had a good relationship with all the board members, and after this, I would ask Jim to join us up here in front of the podium to get a snapshot with the board. Whereas Chief James W. Bowie, Jr. retired from the Gaston County Police Department on July 1, 2015, after serving 29 years with Gaston County. And whereas Chief Bowie has requested that he be awarded the service sidearm Heckler & Koch Model HK45C, serial number 216-013759, and badge worn during his service with the Gaston County Police Department pursuant to General Statute 20-187.2 and Board Resolution Number 259 dated October 27, 1983. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gaston County Commissioners, 1, the badge worn by Chief Bowie and his service sidearm, Heckler & Koch, model HK45C, be declared surplus equipment. 2, the badge worn by Chief Bowie be given to him as a remembrance of his service with the Gaston County Police Department. 3, the service sidearm, Heckler & Koch model HK45C, be permanently retired by the Gaston County Police Department and offered to Chief Bowie at the price of $1. The Chief of the Gaston County Police Department is directed to award Chief Bowie with the service sidearm and badge as specified and worn by him during his service to the Gaston County Police Department, in accordance with the North Carolina General Statutes and the policy of this board. Be it further resolved that the Gaston County Board of Commissioners express their sincere gratitude for the dedicated service of Chief James W. Bowie, Jr., retired, and wishes him the best in his retirement, and we will adopt that at our business meeting on the 26th. I'd just like to say congratulations and wish you the best in retirement. Retired Chief, would you like to have a word?
On behalf of the citizens of Gaston County and the men and women that you've mentored and led for these so many years, we thank you as part of the token of our appreciation for your service and dedication. And we also want to thank Susie for sharing you with us. Thank you so much.
Chairman Keeger, Commissioners, Mr. Mather, and all those here in attendance for me, thank you for this recognition. And of course, I thank God and my family for everything that has led to this day and will transpire in the future. I do have a few words to say, but since I've failed miserably on past occasions to say what I wanted to without swelled up emotions, I think I'm going to read this time. I'll be brief, but I want to start off with a little story that some of you may have heard before. A member of a certain church who previously had been attending services regularly stopped going. After a few weeks, the preacher decided to visit him. It was a chilly evening. The preacher found the man at home alone, sitting before a blazing fire. Guessing the reason for his preacher's visit, the man welcomed him, led him to a comfortable chair near the fireplace, and waited. The preacher made himself at home but said nothing. In the grave silence, he contemplated the dance of the flames around the burning logs. After some minutes, the preacher took a fire tongs, carefully picked up a brightly burning ember, and placed it to one side of the hearth, all alone, then sat back in the chair, still silent. The host watched all this in quiet contemplation. As one lone ember flame flickered and diminished, there was a momentary glow, and then his fire was no more. Soon it was cold and dead. Not a word had been spoken since the initial greeting. The preacher glanced at his watch and realized it was time to leave. He slowly stood up, picked up the cold, dead ember, and placed it back in the middle of the fire. Immediately it began to glow, once more with the light of warmth and the burning coals around it. As the preacher reached the door to leave, his host said with a tear running down his cheek, "Thank you so much for your visit, and especially for the fiery sermon. I shall be back in church next Sunday." Now, I'm sure there are many sermons to be spoken about that short parable, but I'm not a preacher. I'm just a servant that was privileged to be allowed to serve the citizens of Gaston County as a police officer and retire as the chief of the Gaston County Police Department. So I can only correlate that parable, that story, from my collective experiences. What it clearly tells me, and has reminded me over many years after first reading that parable, is that it was never all about me. Imagine that. I'm only one ember. It's all about us, all of us working together, working as one team. Those surrounding me help me to shine. They help me to be a contributing member to a family focused towards being united in thought and uniformed in action. In doing so, we provide an awesome service to our citizens and a positive example of law enforcement. With all that is going on in the world today and intensified critiques of law enforcement practices, I've often reflected on a little conversation I had with one of my basketball coaches after a loss that never should have happened. He said, "Bowie, we were complacent and basking in the glory of our talents and past victories. Then we were stunned by their effort to win and forgot the fundamentals." Now, I've cleaned that up a bit. I cleaned it up a whole lot. But I think you get the gist of what he was saying in the moment. Something to the effect that you can't choke when it's game time. Well, for us, police, game time is 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. And as chief, I think it might have been 25 hours a day, 366 days out of the year. I tried to assure that the county police was sound in their fundamentals of policing, never unprepared for any event. We strengthened our training at all levels long before the current events of today, and strive to become number one in solving criminal offenses, while maintaining the high bar that was already set by past chiefs, assistant chiefs, and all other ranks and members within the police department. This by no means was an easy task to accomplish, but we did. And I have no reason to believe that will change under the leadership of Chief Ramey. I also remember hearing comments from time to time that the county police was special. Whether it was meant sarcastically or genuinely didn't make a difference to me. They were right, at least in the fact that the men and the women that work for the Gaston County Police Department and all of law enforcement are special. When everyone's running out, the men and women in uniform are running in, and those not in uniform, to include yourselves, become the support group that manages all the unseen work that goes beyond the tragic events to calm the concerns of our communities. It will always be my humbled honor to have worked in the trenches as a patrolman and eventually to haul the water for my team to do their job as chief. I believe we have collectively met the expectations of our citizens. I believe we have not only collectively met the expectations of our citizens, but we continue to adhere to the police code of ethics, and in doing so, I believe we will continue to be mindful of at least one key element of policing and one key element to interacting with the public, both which I have voiced repeatedly. The first is the badge is pinned to your heart, not your uniform. The second, everyone views the world from where they sit, so it's sometimes necessary to exchange seats to effectively communicate. I truly believe the code of ethics, my repeated reminders, and much more will continue to be an institutionalized practice for our police department. With all that said, I'll say to each and every one of you, thanks again for all the memories. You've taught me well. So I'll leave you with one last notion I've tried to live by. Before you quit, try. Before you pray, forgive. Before you spend, earn. Before you criticize, wait. Before you act, listen. And before you react, think. In other words, try to forgive others while you earn trust and wait to listen carefully before you think to answer. Again, thank you for the opportunity to serve. May God bless each and every one of you.
Mr. Kigger, can I say something? The chief, I know you say that he had a great relationship with all of us, but Chief, I want to thank you for your many years as an officer and then as a leader of our very professional group of police officers here in this county. We have good law enforcement, and thank you and the many men and women that work for you. Thank you.
Chief, thank you for what you've done for our citizens. Most of all, thank you for what you've done for me. I know the many days we sat down in that office and you gave me advice, and I couldn't, it's immeasurable, but I appreciate that, and that's the friendship I'll take with it. But what you've meant to our community, what you've meant to those men and women behind you, it's immeasurable, so thank you.
Chief, it's been a privilege for me and an honor to get to know you over these last couple of years and work with you and your team. And I'd have to say you've been the ultimate professional in every endeavor, every time we've ever worked on anything. And I appreciate that. And I just wish you Godspeed in your retirement. Thank you.
Move to your right. Keep going. I can't talk, but I did it whatever.
Somebody else wanting to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Keeger. Again, as we recognize Chief Bowie, I just, on behalf of the men and women of the County Police Department, we want to thank Chief Bowie for his leadership, his mentoring us over these years, and we especially want to thank his wife and children for giving him up for 29 years to serve each and every one of us as well as the citizens. We're going to miss him. Again, he is a great mentor to each and every one of us, and we just thank him so much for his friendship and, of course, his dedication to each of us. So thank you, Chief Bowie.
Thanks for coming out, everyone. Appreciate
Well, I was going to do a different one, so I didn't have to come back down, but who's got the next one? No. Come on, why they're all up here. It's easier for me to step aside.
And this is another pleasure given to me as well. Not only is Talmadge one of the best police officers we've had, but he's also a great friend, him and his wife. One of the things that he challenges me at is riding my bicycle, which he's got me a little bit right now. So, whereas Sergeant Talmadge N. McGinnis retired from the Gaston County Police Department December the 1st, 2015, after serving 28 years with Gaston County. And whereas Sergeant McGinnis has requested that he be awarded the service sidearm H&K model HK45 and badge worn during his service with the Gaston County Police Department pursuant to General Statute 20-187-2 and the Board Resolution number 259 dated October 27, 1983. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gaston County Board of Commissioners, the badge worn by Sergeant McGinnis and his sidearm Heckler & Koch model HK45, serial number withheld, and declared surplus equipment. The badge worn by Sergeant McGinnis is given to him as a remembrance of his service with the Gaston County Police Department. His service sidearm H&K model HK45, serial number withheld, permanently be retired with the Gaston County Police Department, offered Sergeant McGinnis at the purchase price of $1. The Chief of the Gaston County Police Department is directed award Sergeant McGinnis with the service sidearm and badge specifically worn during his service with Gaston County, in accordance to the North Carolina General Statutes and policy of the Board. Be it further resolved that the Gaston County Board of Commissioners expresses sincerest gratitude and dedicated service to Sergeant Talmadge M. McGinnis, retired, and wishes him the best in his retirement, this to be adopted at our regular meeting on the 26th day of January 2016. Talmadge, thank you so much, my friend. It means a lot. And also to you, young lady, for allowing him to have us for such a time.
Talmadge, it's your weapon and badge. Thank you for your service. Thank you. On behalf of the citizens and your coworkers, we appreciate your dedication and professionalism and the time that you spent with us. And we're going to miss you.
Thank
floor is yours.
I'm sorry, I'm not the speech person that Chief Bowie is, so just real simply, I'd just like to thank y'all for allowing me to serve the citizens of Gaston County. It's truly been a pleasure and experiences I'll never forget. Again, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Commissioners, for your comments towards the retired chief. At this time, I'd like to present the proclamation in support of Black History Month. I will again call Lowell Council Member Tom Gillespie, who's also the pastor of the Hebron, the Church of Jesus Christ in Lowell, and he's here on behalf of his community to accept this, and I'm happy that you got here tonight. Whereas February is Black History Month and recognized throughout the United States as an opportunity to celebrate the historical and present achievements and contributions made by African Americans to the economic, cultural, political development of our great country, the state of North Carolina, and our local communities. Whereas Black History Month's early origins began in February 1926 when Negro History Week was established by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a Harvard scholar and the son of a former slave. Dr. Woodson launched an initiative to encourage the study of Black history and the African American experience in the United States. He chose February because it marked the birthdays of both President Abraham Lincoln and the American abolitionist Frederick Douglass. And whereas Dr. Woodson's legacy influenced the eventual shift from Negro History Week to a month-long celebration later be established in the mid-'70s and celebrate thereafter as Black History Month. And whereas the national theme for Black History Month of this year is Hallowed Grounds, Sites of African American Memories, celebrating the history of African Americans as it unfolds across the canvas of America, from the Mayflower to the present. The imprint of African Americans is deeply embedded in the narrative of our past, and these hallowed sites serve as a reminder and a celebration. And whereas this year marks the 52nd anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, which was first proposed by President John F. Kennedy in 1963, and eventually signed into law during the height of the American Civil Rights Movement on July 2, 1964, by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The legislation prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, gender, or national origin, and paved the way for future anti-discrimination legislation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gaston County Board of Commissioners, in commemoration of this nationwide celebration, hereby proclaims February 2016 as Black History Month in recognition of the many contributions of African Americans to Gaston County, North Carolina, and the nation at large. This will be adopted at our business meeting on the 26th also, and Reverend Tom, I'd like to present this to you and allow you to have a word if you care to.
Very briefly, I'd just like to thank Chairman Commissioner Keeger and to all the commissioners, and I accept this on behalf of every humanitarian and civic organization in our Black community, and I'm sure that everyone realizes that on behalf of all the organizations, everyone realizes that we are judging people not on the color of their skin, but as Dr. Martin Luther King said, on the content of their character. On behalf of all the organizations in Gaston County, thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Tom. At this time, we have citizen recognition. Are we skipping something? Oh, no, no, we're not. Mr. Don Barkley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jason, did you want to do it?
Don Barkley, 3101 Whitson Road in Gastonia. Just want to share some thoughts with you again about this Political Action Committee that I talked about last meeting. Now, as I understand it, a Political Action Committee has to file a report with the Elections Board, same as any candidate, on finances. The difference being it will be the Elections Board in Raleigh. Now, there used to be a very nice lady up there named Johnny McLean. I have no idea that she's still there. However, I think you would want that report using the talents of our very efficient clerk, Donna Buff, and her new computer skills. Now, the reason for the report, I notice a lot of times in a meeting, you people have trouble finding enough people to serve on committees. And that here would be a whole inventory of names that you could use in the future. And people that are interested in Gaston County, and let them come to the open meetings and serve on committees. I think you will find out, are they really serious or not? And that's about all I have to say, but in other words, what you can do is take adversity and turn it into opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barkley. Next, Jacob Ryan. Donna, do we need names and address at work sessions? Okay, well, Mr. Barkley's 3101 Whitson Drive in Gastonia. Mr. Ryan, if you would state your name and address, please.
My name is Jacob Ryan, 142 Old Willis School Road, Dallas, North Carolina. I was born and raised in Gaston County, right within sight of where I live now. In 1964, I built the residence I live in now. I paid to have my yard landscaped. And I paid the guy an extra week and a half of my wages to assure me that there was no rocks left in my yard that could damage anything. That's been 50 years. Last year, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the town of Stanley put a 10-inch sewer line through my yard. Dug a trench approximately 4 to 5 foot deep. I have rocks now. I can't mow my grass. Can you imagine this coming out from under a lawnmower at 100 miles an hour and striking a vehicle? They refuse to do anything about it. And I don't think that I ought to have to dig into savings to pay for their negligence. I know we have to work with progress. Nobody complained anything about them coming through, although we was lied to from day one about where it would go and all this. We welcomed the construction crews. They were friendly. Everybody was friendly to them. And then they just left them just a mess. Since July, I've been at every town council meeting that Stanley's had. I've got no progress. I've got excuses, everything from it's too dry, it's too hot, it's too wet, season's ending, so we're not going to do no more. I agree we got to have progress, but don't cost the rural citizens of this county money just to satisfy somebody's negligence. You may can't help me, but at least we consider some kind of ruling in the county that a construction has to more or less put the property back like it was. We were promised that we wouldn't even be able to tell they was there. Boy, we're a far cry from it now. And that's been over a year. I didn't cut my grass a time last year because of these rocks. They sent 2 councilmen to my residence. One of them asked me if I'd try to cut it. I originally told him no. But then I relented, and I cut a strip about as far from me to the county manager. I'd thrown 3 rocks across Old Willis School Road. One of them narrowly missing a car. They've got the grading wrong, the water's draining wrong, and the heavy rain, there's water 1 inch deep running across Old Willis School Road. We've got water standing in ditches. This ain't right, fellas. Y'all probably never heard of me before. I've been here twice before this, and that was zoning meetings. I try to let everybody do their job, but I've been wrong this time. Would you like this to come through your windshield driving by?
No, sir.
I don't see, if it happens, the problem is I'm going to get sued. Thank you for your time. I appreciate any help you can give me. Sergeant at Arms had to escort me with this up here tonight. I thank you very much. I'll answer any questions I can. Got a bunch of pictures if you want to see them. If not tonight, or any of you want to meet with me later, just give me a call.
You can present the pictures to the clerk and we'll take a look at them.
Well, there's about 100 of them.
Well, maybe give us 5 or 6. We get the, we
Well,
understand.
they're in a book.
Oh, okay. And you said this was the city of Stanley that ran the sewer line?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Keeger,
Yes, sir.
I've been out to the property he's speaking of. I think I spoke with
Jenkins?
Ray about what was in it. This is a matter it's out of our hands just because of, I think there was some liability that they talked about. I think you guys were paid some money for the right of way, and then so it's back between the citizens and Stanley. So I talked to Ray about that, just to let you know, we did check up into it though.
No, sir, we was not paid nothing. It is on a state right of way, but it's still part of my yard, and I still pay county taxes on it.
Well, we will do this. Commissioner Carpenter suggested to me that we have our county manager just give a call to the manager of Stanley and see if there's anything else they can do. As Mr. Brown said, we don't have any jurisdiction over the government of Stanley, and but we can make a call on your behalf to see if there's anything else that can be done.
Well, could we consider putting some kind of county regulation that construction crews have to clean up their mess?
Well, sir, I can't answer that right now. I'm sure when they came through your property, there was a contract you signed?
Sir?
Was there a contract you signed when they
No,
came
sir.
through your property?
No, sir.
No. Again, Mr. Mathers, can you bring this to an end?
I think they're working on the right of way, so it wouldn't necessarily be a contract.
Okay. All right. Well, we will have the manager call the Stanley Town Manager.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to thank folks for serving on county boards and committees, and certificates of appreciation for public service will be mailed to Jeff Swing of the ENR Board, Steve Amos, Family Advisory Board, David Cabe, Fire Advisory Board, Michael Plummer, Sarah Local Planning Committee. At this time, we will have an update on the school bonds. Mr. Brigulio, did I get it?
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay. Well, how about we call you Mitch?
That's what everybody calls me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, working with county staff on the potential school bond financing this coming summer, been working with staff through a number of different iterations and getting updates on the project timing and the potential project costs. So we wanted just to fill you all in on what we've learned and the status of the project as we understand it at this point in time. Do you all have this presentation up in front of you, maybe on a screen, and books I think are being passed around? Okay. Do I have control over this? Perfect. Okay. I can. Let me see. Okay. So as we think about financing these potential school projects, the first thing we wanted to do was just provide you all with a very brief update of your existing tax-supported debt profile. That is the debt you have, the bonds you have outstanding to fund projects mainly of the general fund. You also have some specific financial policies related to tax-supported debt that we just wanted to revisit with you all and update where you stand compared to those financial policies. Then quickly, we'll go into an update on the school projects and some potential financing scenarios for those projects. As of today, the county has bond ratings from two of the major credit rating agencies, Moody's Investor Service and Standard & Poor's. The county is rated in the AA category, AA2 by Moody's and AA- by Standard & Poor's. This is a good credit rating. Means the county has access to capital through the public market. So you all can issue your general obligation bonds, and there will be interest from potential investors to buy your general obligation bonds. Currently, the county has $190.5 million of debt outstanding, estimated as of June 30 of 2014. We're working on your current FY15 audit now and certainly can update this for you when we get that. But you have the $190.5 million of debt outstanding, 173 of which are general obligation bonds. You have some smaller appropriation debt installment purchase contracts of about $10 million. And there's a few revolving loans, which are loans with the state of North Carolina of about $6.5 million outstanding. In total, the $190 million of debt is paid off by fiscal year 2032. On the far right side of this chart, we've introduced a key debt ratio called the 10-year payout ratio. The county does have a financial policy on this ratio, and what it measures is the percentage of the debt you have outstanding, the percentage of the $190.5 million that is paid off within the first 10 years. Currently, as of June 30 of 14, the county had a 72% payout ratio. That means that over the next 10 years, the county is paying off $136 million of the $190 million that is currently outstanding. We've shown on the following page, the county has established a financial policy that sets a minimum for that 10-year payout ratio at 55%. So currently at 72%, the county is in compliance and well above that financial policy. The county also has a financial policy on a second key debt ratio, that is debt to assessed value. That's your debt outstanding divided by the assessed value or tax base in the county. Currently, as of fiscal 15, this is estimated at 1.28%. So 1.28% is your current debt to assessed value. The county has a policy that establishes a maximum debt to assessed value, meaning you won't go above 2.5% on debt to assessed value. Again, at 1.28%, the county is in compliance with that policy and has room to increase the debt outstanding should you choose to. The final key debt ratio that the county has a financial policy on is debt service to expenditures. This measures the percentage of your annual budget that is represented by debt service. Debt service is a fixed payment. You know what that's going to be, and you have to pay it every year. It is not a choice or is not something that you can change throughout the course of the year. So this is a measure of flexibility within the budget. The county has a financial policy establishing a maximum debt service to expenditures ratio of 15%. As of FY15, the county is estimated to be a little over 10.5%. So again, in compliance with this financial policy and has some room to take on additional debt should you choose to. All in all, you're in compliance with your financial policies, you're in good standing, and you have capacity to take on additional debt like the school GO bonds we're talking about this evening. That's within your policies. That's debt capacity. The other question is, how do you repay the debt service? Is it affordable? So we get into that on the next page, looking at your existing debt. This is what we call our debt affordability analysis. And I'll just walk you through briefly. I won't go through every column, but we've done it on a fiscal year basis. And columns B through F represent your current debt service requirements. Column B is your existing debt. That's the general obligation bonds, the installment purchase contracts, and the state bond loans that make up that $190 million of existing debt outstanding. You can see that they're repaid through 2032, and on the $190 million of debt, it works out to $233,000 of total debt service. That's principal and interest. Columns G through K highlight the revenues that are available to pay for that existing debt service. So in your fiscal year 2016 budget, you budgeted $24.28 million to repay the $23.1 million of existing debt service. That was factoring in an allowance for this issuance of potential 2016 general obligation bonds. So as part of that budget process, we have built in some ability to repay this general obligation bond debt. What you see is when you compare columns K to columns F, column L is the surplus deficit in every year based on your existing debt. This is the revenue stream should you choose to continue budgeting at the same level that you budgeted in 2016. This is the revenue stream that could be available to repay the 2016 general obligation bonds. So we wanted to give you that quick overview of your existing debt as we lead into the conversation on the new debt. So the county is considering the issuance of general obligation bonds to fund two new school projects. This is part of the referendum that was previously passed by county voters. And the projects that we're considering is a new elementary school. It's a 114,000 square foot elementary school, which will replace 3 existing elementary schools. The school board is working with Boomerang Design to design the plans for the school building. Currently, those designs are almost complete, and they hope to receive bids, construction bids for the project in March of 2016, with the goal of having construction completed by June of 17 for the August 17 school year. The second school is a new middle school. It's a 136,000 square foot middle school that will replace an existing middle school. I believe it's Stanley Middle School that will be replaced. LS3P is the architect, and they are also working on the design process for this new school. They're about a month behind the elementary school. Thought is by March 2016, March 31st timeframe, they would have bids in hand for that school, construction bids in hand. And that's important. I've referenced construction bids for both the elementary school and the middle school because that's a key date for when we can finance the general obligation bonds. The Local Government Commission, which approves all debt issuance of localities in the state of North Carolina, likes to have bids in hand before they will let you release your general obligation bonds to bid. Total project costs for each of the schools. The elementary school is estimated at $24.8 million, and the middle school is estimated at $27.5 million, with a roughly $2.5 million contingency. Gets us to a total estimated project cost of right at $55 million. These are estimates as of December of 15. We'll have bids in hand, as I said, before we issue the bonds, so we'll know the exact amount and the exact cost of the schools before we do issue those bonds. Talked about the projects, now moving into the financing aspect. The general obligation bonds would be sold into the public markets, meaning that retail investors like yourselves, myself, other citizens would have the ability to purchase the bonds, but also they can be purchased by large institutional investors. And what we will do for that process is we will sell the bonds at a competitive process where we will pick a date and time certain. Right now, we've reserved April 12th with the LGC, but that can be adjusted as needed. And on that date at 11 a.m., we will accept bids from potential investors, bond underwriters, who will facilitate the sale of your bonds. At 11 a.m. on April 12th, they will submit a bid, and we will be able to look at their bids and select the lowest bid on that day, award them the bonds, and they will sell the bonds for you. That competitive process helps the county achieve a low interest rate on the financing. We have looked at two cases for you tonight. Because we're issuing the bonds in the public markets, we are subject to market conditions on the day that the bonds are priced. Currently, investors are willing to pay a premium for bonds like the county's general obligation bonds. So if you were to sell 1 million of bonds, investors are currently willing to pay you more than $1 million for those bonds. In exchange for that difference, that's called a premium. Say, if you issue $1 million, they give you $1.1 million. That $100,000 is called a bond premium. For that additional $100,000 that they're giving you, the investor asks for a slightly higher interest rate on the bonds. That is purely driven by the market at the time of the financing, and because we're issuing this through a competitive sale process, we will be able to evaluate all of the bids on the same day and factor in the cost of that premium when we issue the bonds. Because of that premium, we've given you these two cases. Case one is issuing a fixed loan amount of $55 million. So you issue $55 million and you take whatever the investor is willing to pay you for that $55 million, and you repay $55 million of principal over time to the investor. The second case that we've looked at is resizing the loan amount to account for that premium. So for example, if we were to go out with a $55 million bond issue and somebody was willing to pay us $5 million of premium, we would reduce the bond issue, the par amount or the principal you repay, by $5 million so that we generate $55 million of what we call proceeds, or $55 million to fund construction. In each of these cases, case 1 and 2, we've assumed an issuance date of at the end of fiscal year 2016, so April-May timeframe. We've included a level principal amortization. This is the amortization structure that is preferred by the LGC. It's a conservative amortization structure. And what it means is if you issue $20 million of bonds and you have a 20-year amortization, every year you're repaying $1 million in principal plus interest. So if you think about it, in the first year, you're repaying $1 million of principal and you have $20 million of total principal outstanding, your interest is going to be the highest in that first year. And as the balance of your loan declines with the repayment of that $1 million every year, the interest you pay goes down. is reduced. So the debt structure is make your highest debt service payment in the first year, and your debt service declines over time, as opposed to a mortgage style payment where you make a level principal and interest payment every year. We have assumed a 20-year term for this financing. That's a standard term for this type of financing in North Carolina for schools. And we've run each of the cases at current market estimates as of about a week ago, January 4th. So these numbers are going to be preliminary, subject to change until we actually price the bonds, again, right now, mid-April. But this is a look at where you would be in the current market. So I know this is really small font, and I apologize, but just bear with me. There's a lot of numbers on here, but this speaks to what I was just talking about between the two cases, whether we issue the $55 million of principal outstanding or whether we issue enough principal to generate a $55 million construction fund. So in the first case, and I don't know if y'all can see the mouse on your screens that I can point to
We
things.
can't read anything on the screen.
Okay. My apologies. I'm on page 11 of the presentation. So just in summary, case 1, which is on the left, we're issuing a $55 million par amount. That's on line 6. That's generating a premium of $5.25 million. So in total, for your $55 million of bonds, the county would receive $60.2 million of proceeds. Out of those proceeds, you would pay cost of issuance, including the various attorneys and professionals, as well as the underwriter who purchases your bonds through the competitive sale. They will receive a compensation for their work. That compensation will be built into the bid process and factored into their interest rate. So once the costs of issuance are paid, that leaves $59.6 million of proceeds available for construction. In the current market, that works out to a true interest cost, what we call the true interest cost. That's the interest rate that we look at, is just over 2.5%, 2.55%. And that results in a repayment of the $55 million of principal and interest over time of $75.1 million. It's down on the bottom on line 42. Case 2 is where we resize the loan amount. On line 6, we're issuing $50.75 million of par amount or principal. We're generating a $4.8 million premium for total proceeds available of $55.6 million. After paying the underwriter and other estimated cost of issuance, that leaves an exact project fund or an exact construction amount of $55 million. And so what you see is down on line 42, on line 17, you have the same 2.55 average interest rate, but you repay $69.3 million in debt service. So the difference between the two cases is in case 1, you issue $55 million of bonds and you receive $59.6 million of construction funds and repay $75 million of debt service. Whereas case 2, you issue $50.7 million of bonds, you receive a project fund or a construction fund of exactly $55 million, and you repay $69.3 million of debt service. So it's whether you get more money up front or you pay less debt service over time. So what we've done is we've taken those two cases and we've revisited your financial policies, and we've revisited that debt affordability analysis that we walked through previously to see how each of these cases impact your existing tax-supported debt. A summary of the assumptions is up top. I'm on page 12, lines 1 through 10. That's the information we just walked through on the prior page. What you can see in lines 12 through 15 is compared to your policies in both of these cases, You do not exceed your policies. You're in compliance with your policies. That's what we were talking about before. You have the capacity to take on this additional debt service. And under that revenue stream that we identified on the debt affordability analysis as being available to repay these bonds, you're slightly short to repay the debt service in each of the cases. For 3 years, you would need additional dollars. In case one, that would be the equivalent of just over a penny for 3 years. In case two, that would be the equivalent of just under a penny for 3 years. Alternatively, you could come up with one-time dollars, whether it be reserves or other dollars, under case one of $2.2 million or under case two of $1.5 million to add to the affordability analysis and be able to pay that debt service. So case one, you're about $2.2 million short. Case two, you're about $1.5 million short. And so that's what we wanted to share with you this evening. I know staff will be talking to you over the coming days, weeks, and months as we work on the financing. But we wanted to update you all on where we stand today in the current market, and certainly happy to answer any questions you all have.
Well, thank you, Mitch. I have to say that that was one of the most detailed and understandable presentation on financing that I've heard in a while. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate
Questions
that.
from the board? Bryant, is there anything that we need to hear from you?
Mitch may have touched on it, but the $55 million includes the return of the $5 million that the board fronted the school board for the architectural and design work previously. So that's why we're at $55 million, because you passed the reimbursement resolution to return that $5 million to the county coffers.
Yeah,
Hold on, Joe. Chad had his hand up.
Bryant, I can't recall, was that $5 million out of fund balance that we gave them up front? So we will be put that money back into the fund balance that would be first?
Absolutely. That $5 million needs to be returned to the fund balance.
Today, Bryant.
Joe?
we agreed to build the schools, and you've come up with these estimates. And the only thing we like doing is approve the financial process of, these scenarios that you run, whatever we determine.
Yes, sir. So the next steps in the process are we're working with county staff. We're going to have to go and meet with the rating agencies, update your credit ratings. We're working with the local government commission and county's bond council to work on the documentation for the transaction. There will be a document called the preliminary official statement, which is basically the marketing materials that will be provided to investors, as well as there will be a bond ordinance and a bond resolution, which we will be coming back to you all with. You all will take one action or one approval for the preliminary official statement, the bond resolution, and the bond documentation to approve this financing. So we'll be working with county staff on developing that information and going through the process, and certainly come back to you once we have some additional details and look for your guidance.
And we can expect you in April.
Right now, we've got a sale date reserved with the local government commission of April 12th. In North Carolina, competitive bonds or general obligation bonds are sold mostly on Tuesdays. They try and reserve that date, and unless there's extreme circumstances, only one issuer like the county can sell bonds on any given Tuesday. So based on the current calendar, we met with the LGC and got their thoughts, and we reserved a sale date of April 12th, given the construction bid schedule. Now, if that construction bid schedule slides, we may need to work with the LGC and reserve a different sale date. But right now, we've got April 12th, and hopefully we can make that work.
And we'll need to do our approval prior to that.
Yes, sir. You'll need to do that, your approval prior to that, probably in the February time frame.
Okay.
Does staff plan to bring this to the business meeting February 12th? Is that it? 9th. Just as a reminder, again, there'll be one meeting in February on the 9th.
I just had just a crazy question for myself. When we put this 55 million out there, this number could come back lower, but it seems like everything is surrounded around the 55 million. Would we not be better off to get some bids beforehand to, not necessarily now, we can't do it, but in the future, to see what it would cost to build something like these schools that they're asking for?
Well, Commissioner Brown, those, we have preliminary engineering estimates at this point, and they're working through the engineering and design process. We will have those numbers. Currently, it appears that the two schools together are going to cost about $52 million. So we need to finance that 52 and get our $5 million back in fund balance. Does that answer your question?
Just issues going forward. We say we have $55 million. It's amazing how we surround ourselves with that number. I'd rather see a preliminary bid come out and say, this is how much it's going to cost us to build it before we incur that number, so to speak, just for future reference.
Mr. Fraley?
The contingency figure on page 9, is that just in case the construction costs are higher than anticipated? Is that what you're building in there?
Yes, sir, that's an estimate right now, and working with county staff and the schools and their architects, that's basically just a placeholder at this point in time. That will all shake out as part of the construction bid process. And we don't know what that's going to be until they get bids back in early and late March. So that number, what we're showing is the $55 million. That will be fine-tuned, refined as we get bids in hand. The local government commission wants to see the bids because they don't want you to issue more or less bonds than you need. So the bonds will actually be sized to generate however much will be sized based upon the construction bids that you receive.
Right, and that would bring me to my next question. In case 1 versus case 2, what would be the reason that we would want to get $60 million and pay more debt service? I mean, that makes no sense to me why we would even consider case 1.
Well, yes, sir, and I think part of that depends on how construction bids come back. If construction bids come back high, that's potentially a way, if you chose to finance that overage, you could do that without issuing more than the $55 million of bonds.
That answers my question.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Thank you, Mitch. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think our last order of business is something that popped up regarding a financial request by one of our volunteer fire departments. And I just want to predicate it by just explaining to the fellow board members. In early December, our clerk asked me to sign a letter of support for the Tri-Nata Volunteer Fire Department to request financing through the United Financial in North Carolina. And the reason it threw a flag at me, it didn't state what it was for specifically. And being new as chairman, I wanted to make sure the board members were aware of what I was expected to sign. I don't know how it was explained to me, but I was first told it was for a fire truck. It didn't state what it was for in the original letter. And then I heard it was for either a building or remodeling. So Donna and Eric, thank you for coming. Donna requested an explanation from Eric Hendricks, our fire marshal. And the lease purchase agreement between United Financial of North Carolina and the Tri-Nata Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., for renovations of the station in the amount of $1,600,000. And I do understand that this was dealt with in the 13-14 budget, I believe, by virtue of granting a fire district tax increase. Is the chief here? enjoyed talking to you the other day, and I'm sorry you had to come out. I didn't think there'd be any need then, but there were a couple questions and concerns from the board. So I would like, Eric, if you would come up, please, and we have the gist of everything now, and we actually understand that you could still move forward, they could still move forward whether we sign this or not with the financing. But if you would, just, give us the skinny on it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Essentially, the letter that you have been asked to sign is just an acknowledgement letter stating that, in this case, Trinidad Volunteer Fire Department is an active fire department with a contract in the county, and that we, being the board, aware of the transaction. It doesn't say that your approval of it or you like or dislike it. It simply says that you're aware of it and you're telling United Financial for their IRS purposes that, yes, this is a valid fire department with a valid contract within the county. And essentially that's what this is. We've done these in the past, and it's just a letter that typically it's a form letter. We take it and kind of modify it just a little bit to fit our description here, but within the county. But that letter comes from them, and they simply ask that we put that on county letterhead and then ultimately be signed by the chairman of the county commission.
Okay. And I wasn't in any way trying to delay it. It's just that I didn't know what it was about, and I felt compelled to let the board know about it. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I looked at the letter. I mean, it looks pretty harmless, but you said it doesn't really give an opinion, and I think you're right about that, with the exception of I think the last sentence says the board has no objection to this, which that is us taking a stand. So like everything else was just very factual. It's, hey, we recognize this is a fire station, and they're authorized and they collect the taxes. I mean, I got all that, but when Chairman Keeger brought that to us and I read it, it just seemed like that last sentence about us not having objection is us weighing in with an opinion on the matter. So now whether or not it's the right opinion or not, I've not really looked into it, so I have no idea. But I would say it is us taking somewhat of a stand on it.
Would it be better to modify that in some sense to say that you are aware of this transaction as opposed to not objection? I don't know if that's a verbiage that comes from them that they have to have, or if that's just standard text that they put in that letter. We've not changed that portion over time. And so, but I can certainly explore that option to change that terminology at the last sentence there.
Right. Well, again, I'm not versed enough on this. I mean, it didn't come before us. I mean, I'm honestly talking about an issue that we didn't necessarily deal with directly. But I guess I just wanted to point out that it is us taking somewhat of a stand on the particular purchase. And, if we are expected to do that, I don't mind looking into it and giving an opinion. But if there's some verbiage that makes it a little more ambiguous, that satisfies them, and doesn't necessarily put the board in a certain position, I'll leave that determination to the discretion of the chairman of the board. But thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, I guess I just had a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
One, I know going back over, this was in the 2013-14 budget. Why was
Correct.
there a delay to where it's now?
There was some delay originally, and Mark can certainly speak on this if he would like, but they were looking at a couple of different options. They had it narrowed down to renovations to an existing station and purchasing and building on a new site. There were some, to make sure that they crossed T's and dotted I's, that they wanted to look at some Preservation Society land and how this renovation and new purchase would affect, on both sides of that. Ultimately, after some pretty extensive talks back and forth with their architects, they came to a conclusion that they could renovate the existing building that they have, end up with more square footage than what they would have gotten had they went with a new facility, not have to move, and still not jeopardize the surrounding property to the existing fire station. And so it just took the original budget talks, they knew they were going to go in this direction. They just didn't know at the end of the day were we going to go with a new facility or renovate. But the dollar figure was still in there close. And so that's why they asked for that increase that year to help start fund this eventual project. And so that's why there's been some time, and again, some of the members of this board may not have been privy to that original discussion.
I think some from my angst is just because of the time frame. I was the one who put the motion in when we put the budget in. I think where this board looks at it is time incurs a lot of things. So we asked some questions today about, was there any big ticket items that were purchased in the middle of that may have been something where the citizens don't feel comfortable about it, such as fire trucks or anything that were big purchases that may have offset some of this. That was just some of the questions that were coming out. So that was where this sort of came from, is trying to figure out. I'll turn it back to Commissioner Kieger now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Just a couple. How did the 1.6 come up? Estimates?
Mark, can you probably provide a little better detail on that?
Thank you, Chief, for coming out.
Sir, the 1.6 derived from, once we met with the architect, got a building design, went through a bid process, met with different companies, and that's an actual quote for including architectural fees, the building and construction of the facility.
What are you putting a down payment down?
Yes, sir, we will. That is, the 1.6 is the total cost. Our actual financing will probably come in somewhere less than that, but that is a total cost of what the building will incur. As we get into the process and come to fruition, the actual financial dollar will be somewhat less than that. We just don't have that figure yet.
Do you know how much you're able to put down?
Yes, sir. We probably will be able to put down somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of the total cost of the project.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions, can the board feel comfortable with me signing this? Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to change the verbiage, that last sentence. And
I'll pursue that.
I'll, as soon as you get it to Don, I'll make a trip over there and sign it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one other matter. Does anybody else have an other matter? Just take a second. Depending on the size of the agenda for February, and given the voting meeting, and given the fact that these township grants will be discussed and voted on, that is the intent, I'm sure. Depending on the size of the agenda, we may have a work session that Tuesday, if it's called for. If it looks like it's going to be very cumbersome, and it depends on what is brought forward, and maybe everybody can work that out. Last question I have. My request for my portion of that money was to put it back in the general fund balance to help with employee benefits, costs, whatever. Is that going to happen, or is the board going, can the board take my money and spend it? That's what I want to know. My intent is to keep it in there, which helps people in all townships that work in the county. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, when Commissioner Fraley brought this up, it was to return some of this money back to the different townships. And I remember I wanted to keep it all in the fund and put it in something where we could get it interest bearing and use the money off of that for projects through the future. but it's a compromise to get it out there, something that would have some immediate effect on two things: economic development, which creates jobs, capital base, and education. And I remember asking the question, would we be voting on the projects based on that? And I was assured that that's what it would be.
Well, I just want to hear from a majority of the board about the 500 allocation from my township grant.
Well, those are the two things that we said that we would, I think that, I don't know if it's actually in the motion, the minutes of the motion, but that was the discussion that we had.
Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say a couple of things. First of all, I believe the allocation was $3.5 million, and it wasn't to be divided up by commissioner. It was divided up per township. And the purpose was what Commissioner Carpenter said, to put the money back in and let everybody see some of the benefit. With Gastonia being the largest township, and we've seen that, it's evidenced by the fact that Gastonia had by far the most grant requests, number of applications. I think the will of this board was, since we have the largest township, the Gastonia Township's largest one, to ensure that everybody sees benefit from all across the township, that it would get $1 million as opposed to the $500,000 that every other township would be allocated. So that was my understanding. I anticipate, you and I have talked about, where you're at on it. I've reviewed the grants. I plan on getting some more input in the process, but I anticipate at the January voting meeting actually bringing up the recommendations for the Gastonia Township. To Commissioner Carpenter's point, we talked about the three purposes of the money being economic development, education, or health related. We talked about that in our Caramont Health Committee, and we also talked about it here. And I know you were very passionate about the economic development portion of it, but that was the purpose of the fund. So I think if it meets one of those criteria, then I think it would be an appropriate use of the funds. And again, I'll defer to, whatever commissioner thinks, would be the best development in their township. But that's the way I remember it. And I respect where you're coming from, but I think the board wanted to just ensure that everybody could see some benefit from the funds from the organization. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Brown had a concern earlier with possibly spending this money on things that weren't in the realm of what Joe and Jason are talking about now.
That's all in the action, the things that it could be used for.
Well, I think there was a concern that some of our county departments are sponsoring money, projects to be funded, which I think some commissioners think that should be done through the county budget instead of.
We just wouldn't bring those forward.
I agree.
Okay. Mr. Price.
And as far as your question a minute ago, Commissioner Keeger, I would tend to agree with Commissioner Williams on this. I mean, I don't want to see any good project that is deserving, not get an opportunity. And and I understand your position, but and maybe it's a legal question. I mean, maybe Chuck would need to look at it and see if from your standpoint, if you can do that or not. But if you're asking how each commissioner feels about it, I would agree with what Commissioner Williams has said.
Okay, well, I just, for the record, I'm not trying to be a bad guy here towards our townships or our cities or whatever. It's just that, in my mind, if we have triple digit in the millions of backlogs of projects, whether it's education or whatever the area, I just find it hard for me to go out and look for projects to go spend money on when, we have such a tremendous backlog of projects. That said, it'll be up to the will of the board. Any closing remarks, anyone? Yes, sir.
Well, I just don't think on normal budget items that we need to think about this one-time windfall to try to solve reoccurring needs that we have to deal with every year. This is a small percentage of those hospital funds, and apparently it's been well received. We've had over 60 applications, I believe. Is that correct, Earl?
66.
66, and I think it'll be a good thing, and some well-deserved and well-needed projects will take place throughout the county, and we'll move on and deal with the budget items as we're supposed to deal with them every year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fraley. Mickey?
I would, I would say that at the time that we were approving it, I was thinking that you and Jason would split the $1 million and either combine some projects or support projects. So I look at you having 500,000 and Jason having 500,000. You can do with it as you see fit. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mathers, any closing remarks needed?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
All right. That being said, this concludes our work session for this evening. Our next regular meeting will be January 26, 6 p.m. here in the Harley B. Gaston Jr. Public Forum. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please contact our clerk, Ms. Donna Buff, at 704-866-3196. Good evening.